Hello, wonderful seventh graders. Today we're going to practice multiplying more than two integers. It's quite a bit like when we were doing the adding more than two integers, in that you go left to right. When you're just adding, you can just go left to right. It doesn't matter. Same thing with multiplication. So if it's all multiplication, and it is all multiplication. So the first thing I do, just like we did when we were adding the integers, is I just deal with the first two. I do -4 times -2. And I see that their signs are the same. So I know my answer is going to be positive. And then I drop down the rest. +8 times +3, that's 24. So I know my final answer is 24. Same thing on this next problem. We've got 4 numbers to multiply. I'm just going to start with the first two. -5 times -1 is 5. Drop down everything else. If you try to do too much of this in your head, that's where mistakes happen a lot. So at least for right now, it's really good to practice just going step by step. +5 times -2. The signs are different. My product is going to be negative. Okay, I dropped down my times 4. -10 times 4. Negative times a positive is negative. The signs are different, so it's negative. -40. I'm going to do a couple more, and then I'm going to show you a really cool number trick. Okay, just start again with the first two. I've got -7 times -2. The signs are the same, so the product is going to be positive, and I'm dropping everything else down. And then I do 14 times -1. A positive times a negative, the signs are different. My product is negative. And finally, -14 times 2. I know my answer is going to be negative because my signs are different, and my product is 28. -28. Whoa, last one is a long one. Holy cow. Good thing I have lots of room left on my paper. -5 times +5 is -25 because the signs are different. And then it's going to be times 2 times -1 times -1. -25 times +2. I know that's going to be a -50 times -1 times -1. I just dropped the rest down. Okay, -50 times -1. That's a negative times a negative, which I know is a positive. Notice that when you multiply by -1, you're making the number the opposite. If I did 50 times -1, it would be -50. That's going to be really important as we move forward in math. 50 times -1, I know that. Positive times a negative, that's -50. So first we had -50. We multiplied it by -1 and got +50. Then we multiplied that by -1, and it made it the opposite, -50. When we multiply by -1, we're making it the opposite. Okay, now I have a cool number trick to show you. It's kind of helpful for seeing if you're like eyeballing if your answers are right when you have these big long problems, and you're going to have lots of them in like algebra. Okay, I'm just multiplying -1 a bunch of different times. Here, I just have -1, which equals -1. But if I have -1 times -1, a negative times a negative is a positive. That's +1. -1 times -1 is +1 times -1 is -1. I'm not showing all my work on these ones because I just want you to be able to really see the pattern really clearly here. -1 times -1 is 1, times -1 is -1, times -1 back to +1. And if all of this was 1 here, and I multiply by -1 one more time, and I can tell you what this one is going to be. So it goes -1, 1, -1, 1, -1, 1. And it would go on like that if we kept adding one more -1 on to our problem each time. And I want you to notice something. My answer is positive here, here, here. And if I had 8 of them, then it would be positive. 10 of them, even numbered. If there's an even number of negatives being multiplied, your product is going to be positive. If there's an odd number of negative numbers being multiplied, your product is going to be negative. So if I were doing some of these problems like we just did, I'm just going to go and look at, oh, I have 2 negative numbers. That means my answer is going to be positive because I have an even number of negative numbers. Let's see, let's count. 1, 2, 3. That's an odd number. That means my answer is going to be negative. How many negative numbers do we have here? 1, 2, 3 negative numbers. So that I know my answer is going to be negative because it's an odd number of negative numbers. And finally, 3 again, I think. 1, 2, 3. And again, my answer was negative because I had an odd number of negatives. So if you want to just kind of look at a problem and kind of see really quickly if your answer is reasonable, a good thing to do is check how many negatives you have being multiplied and check whether or not if you had an even number, you got an answer that was even, or if you had an odd number of numbers being multiplied, you'd have an odd number. All right, guys, have a great weekend. Bye.